In this video, we're going to discuss how to develop full shoulder flexion all the way through the end range. Now, when we're looking at shoulder flexion, ideally we want to see a full 180 degrees. Okay, so that's going to be the arm going past the bicep, and typically we want to see this without any deviation at the trunk. Okay, so not a ton of rib flare. We want to just see a completely vertical torso with the arm moving fully overhead with the thumb back. Now, I like to separate shoulder flexion into 3 stages. The first stage is when we're moving from 0 degrees, initiating that flexion. Now, what happens here is the scapula has to move around the rib cage into internal rotation and a bit of protraction to face the glenoid cavity forward. And then, so we're going to go to about 0 to about 120 degrees here. And then from there, the scapula is going to have to upwardly rotate and allow for more of that shoulder flexion to occur. So the mid stage is going to be from around that 120 degrees to about 160 degrees. And then after that, what's going to happen is the scapula is going to then have to externally rotate. Okay, so it's going to be pulled back in sort of this retraction and posterior tip to then allow the humerus to internally rotate a bit more and achieve that full shoulder flexion. And this is also going to couple with a thoracic extension. So the drills I'm going to share with you today are going to cover that initial stage and mid-stage shoulder flexion. I'll show you that in the first drill, and then the last 2 drills are going to cover that end range shoulder flexion that a lot of people tend to get stuck in, that around that 160 to 180 degrees, people might notice some jamming, so some impingement in the front of the shoulder, in the back of the shoulder. And I'm just going to share with you the techniques to allow for that scapula to move more freely so that humerus can move through full excursion of shoulder flexion. Now, if you're somebody who suffers with stiff shoulders in all directions, then I highly suggest you check out my Supple Shoulders program, which will be a very comprehensive mobility program in all the directions the shoulder moves through: flexion, extension, adduction, abduction, and internal and external rotation. So this will cover all your bases with your shoulder flexibility needs. That being said, let's get into the first exercise that's going to cover that early to mid stage of shoulder flexion. Okay, this is the bench lat stretch with elbow drive. Now, with this stretch, we're going to be targeting more of the distal fibers of the lats that connect to the humerus, the portions of the lat that extend the humerus and internally rotate. So the idea with this drill is to maintain humeral external rotation and scapular protraction for as long as possible and not deviate into that internal rotation and scapular external rotation as we would do so in a full overhead position. Traditional lat stretches, that encompass some hanging and side bending, these are going to primarily stretch the portions of the lat that insert in the pelvis and the lumbar spine, the more proximal iliac and lumbar fibers. Whereas with this variation, we want to fully bias the fibers that manipulate the shoulder first and foremost. So we're going to crush the fist down into a bench. And to start, we're going to push the rib cage back into space and posteriorly tilt the pelvis. Now we want to keep the elbows in as much as we can. So the elbow has to be at least in line with the hand. And now I want to keep an elbow bent. Okay, so there are times where I'd want to go with a straight arm, but for this variation, we're going to go with an elbow bend because this is going to influence more of that scapular protraction as we can reach that elbow toward the ground, and I'll explain that in a moment. So I'm going to fully round the upper back, pushing the rib cage back. And now from here, I'm going to think about pulling the elbow down toward the ground without letting my chest rotate away. Okay, so I want to keep this shoulder down. And as I reach that elbow toward the ground, we should feel a strong contraction through the serratus anterior in here, and also some decent length through the lats kind of near the armpit area. Okay, so contraction number 1 is I'm going to drive the fist down into the bench through shoulder extension. About 5 to 10 seconds, I'm going to relax that tension, and then I'm going to move into more protraction of the scapula. Try to drive that elbow down toward the ground even more. Relax. I could scoot the knees back, maintain posterior tilt, drive the fist down, relax that, pull the elbow in and down toward the ground, try to rotate my sternum toward the arm, and we should feel a lot of length and load going through this upper portion of the lat. So give this a try, and this will improve your ability to maintain external rotation and the elbow directly in front of the shoulder in these early stages of shoulder flexion. This next drill is the half eagle hang, and it's actually been a favorite of mine recently to help improve end range shoulder flexion, especially if you're getting some of their impingement. This will help improve the ability for the scapula to externally rotate and allow for that humerus to internally rotate in a full overhead position. Now, I like the half eagle hang variation because we can really focus on one side at a time. So bilateral eagle hang would be like this: fully pronated elbows, internally rotated shoulders, and then we can kind of hang. Now, if forearm pronation, wrist mobility is getting in the way, then we're not going to be able to access the full amount of shoulder flexion here. That's why I prefer to go one arm at a time, other hand in a normal hang, and then, we could get as close as possible in this grip, and if it's still very stiff in the shoulder, we can face that same side stretching arm, the side that's internally rotated. And then we want to make sure we can fully traction, so fully shrug here. And of course, I'm using foot support here. And then I could just try to pull down on the bar without losing that shrug. Inhale, relax, try to traction a little bit more. Over time, we can start to face our sternum forward more. So again, I'm going to push down. I can even try to resist by trying to externally rotate, so I'm driving my pinky finger into the bar. Relax, and then I can start to face away a little bit more, and we'll feel that humerus rotating more into internal rotation. So again, contract. I'm trying to spin into external rotation into the bar. Relax, traction even more. I could face away. Or we can move into more of a narrow grip. So give this a try. I typically hang out in the position, do some contract, where I'm trying to contract into external rotation, relax. Do that for about 3 to 5 cycles. So I last in the position anywhere from 45 to 70 seconds. Okay, so of course we're going to do both sides. You might notice one side is a bit pinchier than the other. Contract, relax, rotate away. You could take the pelvis to the other side as well, which will drag the humerus into more internal rotation. Okay, so this is going to really help improve that end range shoulder flexion as we get some traction through the shoulder to improve that scapular external rotation and humeral internal rotation. Again, this has been a very beneficial drill for my shoulders. I've been getting some impingement, and this drill has significantly helped, so give it a try. You can also find this drill in the hanging portion of my Supple Shoulders program. Within that program, after each day, there's a hanging sequence, so I really do find hanging variations to be a gold mine for improving shoulder health and mobility. This last drill for improving that end range shoulder flexion is going to be this wall foam roller chest slide drill. It's not a great name, but it makes sense, and you'll see that in a moment. So when we go through full shoulder flexion, we need to be able to extend the thoracic spine to create a stable platform for that scapula to externally rotate, for that humerus to internally rotate. So we're going to allow all of that to occur by driving that thoracic extension with full lumbar extension as well. So I'm going to place my hands on the roller. Now it's going to be a bit easier if you keep the palms forward. Okay, so this is going to place the scapula in more external rotation, the humerus in more internal rotation. And then I'm going to sit my butt back as I try to drag my chest parallel to the wall. Okay, so I can go up and down for reps. And then we're going down to the point where we really feel that upper back working hard. And then once we get to that point where we feel the upper back working hard, we're going to pause and attempt to lift the hands off the roller. And we should feel those lower traps really firing hard, the mid-back muscles. Now, we can also turn our palms into a bit more external rotation to help kind of delay that internal rotation, and this will further emphasize thoracic extension. So again, dragging down the wall, pushing my butt back, trying to lift the hands off the roller. Now to progress this too, I can get all the way against the wall and actually slide my chest down the wall. And I'm going to feel this much more strongly through the thoracic spine. When we're doing this, we want to keep the arms shoulder width distance, and we want to keep the arms completely locked out straight. So I like to do anywhere from 10 to 15 reps, and then a nice hold on the last rep where I'm really trying to fire up the upper back muscles, try to pull the hands away from the roller as if I'm moving into shoulder flexion. If I even retest myself, this feels so much less restricted than it did at the start of the video. Hey guys, there you have it. Here are 3 exercises you can implement into your routine, implement it into your warm-up. You can use all 3 of them, or you can use just 1 or 2, depending on where your main limitation lies and what you want to prioritize. I would suggest doing these exercises 2 to 3 days a week for 2 to 4 total sets, and you're really going to notice your shoulders open up. If you want to see more unique strategies like this to improve how your shoulders move, how they function, and improve the end ranges in all directions, then I highly suggest you check out my Supple Shoulders program. The link will be in the description. And if you're dealing with a unique case of shoulder pain and you want a plan tailored to your own unique limitations, then please reach out and we can have a one-on-one assessment. If you like the video, please hit the like button, share it with somebody with really stiff shoulders that needs to improve that full overhead capability. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. All right guys, till next time, stay supple.